Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through? But that's a doggone season that he won't try something new. A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. But it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Because it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. And it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy, and the change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Yes, it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy,
Welcome from my humble second bedroom here in East Talkin Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, North American continent, Western Hemisphere on this planet Earth, the only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the TKE tonight for the 25th of September 2024. We are live right now on my Facebook, Jeff Kennedy. We are live on our home group Facebook page for the program, which is That Other Side of Information. We are live on our YouTube channel, which is That Other Side of Information. And we are live on our Twitch at Jeff R. Kennedy, as well as our LinkedIn, which is Jeff Kennedy as well. We continue to get very, very good reactions from the LinkedIn. I'm not exactly sure why, I gotta be honest with you. It's not that kind of platform, but hey, it's going well, and I'm good with it. Works for me. So yeah, let's do that. I am a little off tonight. I have quite the migraine headache, and let me just tell you what's going to be happening the remainder of the program schedule, if you will. Obviously, we are here now. It is our plan. Actually, I don't know what the plan is for tomorrow. I'm having surgery tomorrow morning. I have no idea how I'm going to be feeling. And I'm going under for that. So I just can't tell you how I'm going to be feeling. No idea whether I'm going to be here with you or not tomorrow evening. It is our plan to be back on Sunday, even though the effects of this surgery is a 2-step process that's going to cover about 10 days. So it's going to be a rough next couple of weeks, and but if I feel well enough, I'll be here with you. That's all I can really say. I don't think I'm going to have to or need to take the entire 2 weeks off, but I don't. It's not going to be. I don't think I'm going to need to be here, be gone that much. But I just simply don't know how. I have had this surgery before, and it's not pleasant. And I fear that this one is not going to be pleasant either. But we shall see. We shall see how we're doing. Welcomes to Randall and Donna, as always. If you are new to the program, regardless of where you're watching, please drop us a hello. Let us know what your first name is and where you might be watching. A special hello and welcome to our watchers and viewers and listeners from outside the United States, of which there is a sizable number, which I find fascinating, but I keep, which is fascinating, but I love it. It's neat. It's a neat thing that we continue to get more and more listeners and viewers and such from outside the States. I just think it's awesome. And so if you are, please let us know where you're watching. Just drop a first name in, where you're watching or listening. Let us know where you are anywhere around the planet. With the audio of the program, of course, is live right now on GCPR, Ghost Call Productions Radio. GCPR.live is the website. It's in the chat. Give it a click. Check us out. Find out about the schedule and all of the different shows and hosts and everything that's happening here at GCPR. After all, it is GCPR.live, where your voice matters and where all voices matter. And remember, just under, what I guess it would be about 22 hours from now, we debut a brand new program, or at least it is scheduled to debut. A brand new program debuts 22 hours from now, from 6 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow night. Here's to Your Healthcare with Simon Hutton and Professor Chuck Panaccio. That begins, launches, debuts, pick your favorite word, tomorrow, Thursday the 26th, from 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Following us, of course, tonight from 11 p.m. is Conversations with T. Nathan. Sound of Coffee returns tomorrow morning with Thomas from 8 p.m. 8 p.m. My God, no, that would be me, 8 p.m. 8 a.m., of course, is what I'm trying to say. I'm saying very badly. I'm very much off my game. My head is really pounding. I should probably begin to tell you all when I actually feel decent, as opposed to when I'm ill, because I never feel well. But I should probably let you know, when I actually feel halfway decent instead of when I'm sick, because I seem to be sick all the time, or at least, something seems to be wrong most of the time. Anyway, let's get to the top stories of the day. If you read the header on the program that we posted, we're going to be focusing on the fact that the vice president sat down for an interview with Stephanie Wu of MSNBC. And we'll be talking, of course, about everything that continues to be happening in the Middle East. Let's start there. From the Associated Press, Abby Sewell and Albert Ahi. Thousands pouring into Syria, fleeing worsening conflict in Lebanon. Families fleeing the escalating conflict in Lebanon poured into Syria in growing numbers on Wednesday, waiting for hours in heavy traffic to reach the relative safety of yet another war-torn country. UN officials estimated that thousands of Lebanese and Syrian families had already made the journey. Those numbers are expected to grow as Israel targets southern and eastern Lebanon in an aerial bombardment that local officials say has killed more than 600 people, at least a quarter of them women and children. Israel says it is targeting Hezbollah fighters and weapons. Lines of buses and cars extended for several kilometers from the Syria border beginning on Monday, and some families were seen making the journey on foot. Once in Syria, people waited hours more to be processed by overwhelmed border officials, and relief workers handed out food, water, mattresses, and blankets. I don't exactly know what else to add to this story. I have made certainly my opinion very, very plain. Israel has every right to defend itself. It has every right to protect the integrity of its borders. It is a globally recognized nation state. But it must. To be a member of the family of nations, you have to act like one. And conducting unbridled, uncontrolled warfare just so the prime minister can stay in his job isn't good enough. I don't expect the Israeli military to oust Prime Minister Netanyahu. I think there will have to be a political process. There's not going to be any elections in Israel as long as this fighting is going on. And that's exactly, then it becomes a feedback loop. It starts to feed on itself. It's exactly why Netanyahu is keeping the fighting going, because he wants to stay in office. Would anyone, not just here in the United States, but in Israel itself, would people in his own war cabinet be surprised if he wasn't still accepting envelopes full of cash, as he's done throughout his tenure? He's not the one fighting. He's not on the front lines. He's not flying a fighter jet. He gets to stay out of jail. He gets to kill Arabs that no one likes anyway. The money keeps rolling in. This is where I do think sometimes, and I'm very torn on this particular slice of the story. For people in the United States who say, why are we not cutting off arms supplies to Israel? Or at least limiting them, thus forcing them, the Israelis, to be a bit more judicious in their use. And I have to say, I'm beginning to come round to that idea. I'm not sure I was there at the beginning. Hamas and Hezbollah are being armed by Iran. Iran certainly is not putting any limitations on their arming of their proxies. But I do think the Israelis, while defending themselves, just need to be better. Destroy all the military targets, blow them into bits so small they could never be pieced back together. If you're fighting armed people on the ground, win. This indiscriminate bombing, the idea that there's no such thing as collateral damage, it just isn't right. It's not what, well, I mean, I said it before. Israel always seems to be in a fight, in some sort of public spectacle with other nations at the United Nations. Israel always seems to be on the verge of being condemned for this, that, and the other. And some of it is quite justified. And consistently, the United States bails them out by vetoing these various resolutions as a permanent member of the Security Council. But maybe it's time not to do these things anymore. Maybe it's time to let them feel a little grief. I think most nations at the United Nations would tell you, of course Israel can defend itself. Of course they can. And they should. In fact, they have a moral obligation to defend themselves, but not the indiscriminate killing. Israel-Hamas war latest. Israel threatens ground operation after long-range Hezbollah missile attack. The Israeli military is preparing for a possible ground operation in Lebanon, the Israeli army chief said Wednesday, as Hezbollah launched dozens of rockets into Israel, including a longer-range projectile that set off air sirens in Tel Aviv and across central Israel. It was the group's furthest strike yet. Israel said it intercepted the projectile, and there were no reports of casualties or damage. Addressing troops on the northern border, Chief of Staff General Herzi Halevi, and I'm sure I butchered that name, said the latest airstrikes were designed to, quote, prepare the ground for your possible entry and to continue degrading Hezbollah. It was not clear whether the general was referring to a ground operation, airstrikes, or some other form of retaliation against Hezbollah, which is Lebanon's strongest political force and, with backing from Iran, is widely considered the top paramilitary group throughout the Arab world. The Israeli military said in recent days it has no immediate plans for a ground invasion. The general's comments were the strongest yet, suggesting troops could move in. On the nicer side of that, if I can find it now, here's some hope. Again, Associated Press, Amir Madhani, Matthew Lee, and Jennifer Peltz. France and the U.S. are working on a plan for a 21-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. Dateline New York, the United Nations. France's foreign minister said Wednesday that his country and the United States are working on a proposal for a 21-day ceasefire, quote, to allow for negotiations, unquote, in the escalating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah that killed more than 600 people in Lebanon in recent days. Jean-Noel Barrot told the UN Security Council during a meeting about the conflict that the proposal would be released shortly and, quote, we are counting on both parties to accept it without delay. Barrot said France, a former colonial power to Lebanon, and the United States have consulted with the sides on, quote, final parameters for a diplomatic way out of the crisis, adding, war is not unavoidable. U.S. Deputy Ambassador to the United Nations Robert Wood encouraged the Council to support the diplomatic efforts, but didn't offer specifics about the plan. Earlier Wednesday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. administration was intensely engaged with a number of partners to de-escalate tensions in Lebanon and to work to get a ceasefire agreement that would have so many benefits for all concerned. Blinken and other advisors to President Biden have spent the past 3 days at and on the sidelines of the annual UN General Assembly meeting of world leaders in New York, lobbying other countries to support the plan, according to U.S. officials who spoke on conditional anonymity. The U.S. is trying to cover all bases here. We continue to supply Israel seemingly without end and without guardrails and without controls. At the same time, we continue to work for peace, both in Gaza and southern Lebanon. I can assure you, and I don't think I'm breaking any ground here, I don't think I'm telling you anything that you don't already know. I don't think in any way, shape, or form the United States, France, the Western powers, if you will. To be honest, I'm not even sure Russia or China wants to see full-scale open warfare between Israel and Iran. The only country who might want to see it would be North Korea, because the Iranians would have to buy arms from them. And we all know that North Koreans are starved for money. Well, they're starved for food too, to be honest. But there's simply no money. So the North Koreans might be the only ones who would want to see a full-scale open war. But I don't think the U.S. wants it or wants to see it. So while on one hand they continue to supply these arms without any sense of limitation, they're also working not just behind the scenes, but right out in front for peace on both fronts, or at a minimum, a ceasefire so that peace will have a chance to take hold. I'd like to say that I'm optimistic, but I can't, because I don't believe that I would be telling you the truth. So an interesting thing is happening here that, oh goodness, I'm trying to get back to it. Sorry, Dave. Randall says, so on the streaming service that I'm using, up until a few days ago, I used to be able to see the name of the person who was either watching or commenting or whatever. That doesn't seem to be happening anymore. So I'm not 100% sure why. But then we just go back to Facebook, and you can see it. Randall says, I absolutely believe that we need to cut off arms to Israel as long as the government continues to conduct war crimes against the Lebanese civilian population. I'm not even sure I think that we should cut it off, but I do think it's time to start de-escalating this a bit. I do not believe that the Israelis, first off, if we cut off arms, I think in the next 10 minutes, the Israelis are not going to be left defenseless. They have stockpiles upon stockpiles of weapons. They are among the most armed nations on earth. Certainly per capita, for its size, it may be the single best military, most weaponized, armed, stockpiled military on the planet. Relative to its size, absolutely. Remember, the United States spends more on defense than the next, 12 nations put together? Almost $1.5 trillion a year. 50% of that goes to private industry because we've privatized the military. Since Reagan, troops don't even build their own tents, cook their own food, wash their own uniforms anymore the way they used to. It's all been privatized at a substantially higher cost. So the Israelis would not be defenseless in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know that they need to be completely cut off, but maybe instead of asking for, and I'm using a stupid number here just for giggles, instead of asking for 100 tank shells, maybe we only give them 75. Make them use these arms, especially these smart weapons, the way they were intended to be used. Extreme micro-targeting to try to limit civilian casualties. The Israelis currently don't seem to be terribly interested in limiting civilian casualties. And that's the shame of it. Because they should be. Because they should be better. It's not about asking the Israelis to be better than the people attacking them. But they kind of have to be. In World War II, the United States and the Allies didn't set up concentration camps for German prisoners. Because the Germans did. We were better. We fed them and clothed them and housed them. And gave them medical care. And we haven't always been better in our history. In our military history. But part of fighting a war, part of winning a war, it would seem to me, part of that is being better. Being better than your enemy. Turning back inside the United States, Dateline, Tallahassee, Florida. Associated Press, Heather Hollingsworth and Stephen Smith. A huge Hurricane Helene is expected to hit Florida as a major storm and strike far inland. An enormous Hurricane Helene swamped parts of Mexico on Wednesday as it churned on a path forecasters said would take it to Florida as a potentially catastrophic storm, with a surge that could swallow entire homes, a chilling warning that sent residents scrambling for higher ground, closed schools, and led to states of emergency throughout the southeast. Helene's center was about 430 miles southwest of Tampa, Florida, the U.S. National Hurricane Center said, and the hurricane was expected to intensify and accelerate as it crosses the Gulf of Mexico toward the Big Bend area of Florida's northwestern coast. Landfall is expected sometime Thursday evening, which will make it worse because it will already be dark. And the Hurricane Center said by then it could be a major Category 4 storm with sustained winds above 129 miles per hour. Climate change is real. It is a real thing. I have also never sat here and denied that there are multiple contributing factors to that. I think if you go outside, even on a day, well, not today so much because it was cloudy and rainy all day, but even if you go out on a cooler fall day, but you stand in the sun, there's an intensity to the sun that didn't seem to be there when I was younger. But man is the chief contributor to this. You cannot burn fossil fuels for well over a century, fill the atmosphere with a gas that traps heat, and expect it not to get hotter. Why do these storms intensify and grow so much when they're in the Gulf of Mexico? Because the water in the Gulf is like bath water. In some places, it's 90 and 100 plus degree water. Even the life that used to thrive in the Gulf can no longer function. It's entirely too warm. And that warm water, the humidity, feeds these storms. You're talking about a storm that's going to cross Mexico, enter off of the Mexican coast into the Gulf as at most a Category 1 storm, which is still pretty damn serious. But it may yet only be a tropical storm. And by the time it crosses the Gulf, it will be a Category 4. By the time it moves across the Gulf in a day's time, 24 hours time, it'll go from tropical storm borderline Category 1 to Category 4, and some prognosticators, some weather folks have said it's not out of the realm of possibility that it could be Category 5 by the time it hits. I doubt it, but it's not impossible. And how did the Gulf get so warm? One of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, that this planet is not literally boiling from climate change is our oceans. They hold a tremendous amount of the global heat. But they are at a tipping point. These storms are going to come fast, hot, and heavy, and they're going to continue to intensify and do more and more and more damage. Tropical storm conditions were expected in southern Florida Wednesday night, spreading northward and encompassing the rest of Florida, the entire state, as well as Georgia and South Carolina through Thursday night, tomorrow night. The storm was moving north at 12 miles per hour with a top sustained wind of 85 miles an hour Wednesday evening. And this is an older article, so it's already been moved. It's already moved. This is where the Weather Channel is invaluable as a resource. Helene could create a storm surge as high as 20 feet in parts of the Big Bend region forecaster said, if you're not familiar with the Big Bend, it is the curve of Florida where you go from the peninsula to the southern peninsula of Florida to the Panhandle. That curve. Its tropical storm force winds extended as far as 345 miles from its center. 300 miles. So the distance from where I'm sitting to what? Norfolk, Virginia, maybe? Or Boston? Boston, I think, is about 300. From Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to Boston. Tropical storm force winds. And this is just the beginning, because it hasn't hit yet. In case you didn't understand the difference between, well, let me do this. It's 8:35 Eastern Time, 8:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Just about 20 minutes left, 25 minutes left. TKE Tonight, live with you for the 25th of September, 2024. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. I am not running over like I did last night. I have a migraine headache, and I'm absolutely exhausted. And tomorrow, I'll be going in for surgery. So I'm not staying with you till 9:30 or quarter to 10 or whatever the hell we did last night. We're out of here at 9. We got about 25 minutes left. You can be part of it. I encourage you to be part of it with your comments and your questions. You are what makes this program happen. If none of you were there, I could not be doing this. So I want to know what you're thinking. Put your comments and questions in the comments section, chat section, whatever social media platform you might be on. We want to hear from you. We are live right now on my Facebook, Jeff Kennedy, live on our home group Facebook page for TKE Tonight and the Kennedy Effect, That Other Side of Information. We are live on our YouTube channel, That Other Side of Information. And always, 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 if you ever miss any of our program, YouTube really is the best place to go and catch up. We are live on Twitch right now. Jeff R. Kennedy is where you will find us. And we are live on LinkedIn, Jeff Kennedy, as well. The audio of the program blasting out around the globe on GCPR, Ghost Claw Productions Radio. GCPR.live is the website. Visit us, find our schedule, hosts, and shows. Exciting news at GCPR. A brand new program debuts tomorrow evening from 6 p.m. called Here's to Your Healthcare with Simon Hutton and Professor Chuck Panaccio. Check it out, 6 p.m. Following us tonight immediately. Well, no, I shouldn't say immediately. Why did I say that? That's so wrong. Following up, because I'm just fundamentally incorrect. Following us from 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You got 2 hours to go check out some MSNBC, watch the ball game, walk the dog, make cookies, get some milk, whatever it is you need to do. Conversations with T. Nathan comes your way from 11 p.m. GCPR.live and all over our various GCPR social medias. Tomorrow morning, Sound of Coffee returns with Thomas the Villain, Thomas Bishop. And then again, as I mentioned, 6 p.m. tomorrow night, Here's to Your Healthcare with Chuck and Simon. I believe that is Randall, praying for all our friends in Florida and Georgia and North Carolina to be safe, and South Carolina, really. If you've been told to evacuate, then do so. Randall makes an excellent point. My goodness. Governments do not tell you to leave your homes for fun. They don't tell you because they can. They don't just tell you to make you go through all the exercises of moving and evacuating because, they get a giggle out of seeing the crowded roads on a satellite. They do it because they think it's going to save your life. So if you are in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, anywhere that might be in the path of this hurricane, and government officials, federal officials, NOAA, National Aeronautics, the National Oceanic and Aeronautic Administration, I got that right. Atmospheric, that's what it is. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Hurricane Center. If they're telling you to leave, then by God, leave. We have very, very visceral, fundamental, emotional attachments to our homes in this country. They are where we lay our head. They're where we raise our kids, and where we have our furry family members and our neighbors and our schools and all of it. But they can be rebuilt and they can be replaced. Once you're dead, you're dead. So please, if the authorities tell you to leave, please leave. The worst thing that can happen is that it's not as bad as they say, and you go stay in a hotel for a night or two, and it costs you some money, to be honest. But you come home and everything's there and everything's safe. But you're alive. That's the worst that could happen. The worst inconvenience, I guess, really is how I should say it. The worst inconvenience is that you stay in a hotel for a couple of minutes. And it turns out it's not that bad and everything's fine when you go home. I would take that deal. I would take that deal. Yes, Donna, you did send me this video. I have not had a chance to look at it yet. Please feel free to post it in our Facebook group. In fact, I did strongly encourage you to post that video in our Facebook group. We were talking about the execution of Marcellus Williams yesterday. This continues to reverberate through the country. I'm actually a bit depressed that it's not a bigger story. I think this case is one that should have the country hold a mirror up to itself to talk about the death penalty and our rush and obsession to kill as many black men with it as we can. So I don't think the story is gone by any means, and that's good because it will fade. Mr. Williams is gone. He's dead. And once the services are held for him and he is buried, the story will go away. And that's too bad. But I hope that while it is still a story, you can read about it, do some research about it, watch the video from Donna about it. And again, I haven't had a chance to watch all of it myself, but Donna, please feel free to post it in our Facebook group and let others have a look. I think this one's from Randall. We always have a pox on our nation's soul because of President Jackson. Trail of Tears. Yeah, I don't. I mean, good historical reference. I might be missing the context that you're referencing. That's wholly possible that I'm missing. I'm not sure what. I guess as it has to do with our support of Israel and continuing this war. Yeah, if that's the correlation that you're driving at, then yes, you're right. We are, but even more than that, we are a nation built on sin. We're a nation built on the greatest human genocide in the history of the planet. Was the decimation of the indigenous peoples in the North and South American continents by European settlers. And the ones that didn't die from disease, we hunted them and killed them. And then we enslaved some, and that wasn't enough, so we enslaved Africans and brought them here against their will. Yes, Western Hemisphere is largely built on original sin. If that's the correlation that you're trying to make, what that has to do, I mean, well, that's not, I think I understand the correlation that you're trying to make. Maybe I'm missing it. I'm just human. Maybe I'm missing it. But anyway, there's that. This from the Associated Press. Jonathan Cooper is the author. Trump says Ukraine is quote-unquote dead and dismisses its defense against Russia's invasion. An excellent book was released today. 3 of the lawyers that worked on Robert Mueller's investigation of the Trump administration, the first Trump campaign, the first Trump administration, for Russian help and interference in getting him elected in 2016. Three of those investigators, three of those lawyers wrote a book about exactly how bad it was and how much Trump obstructed the investigation. It is a must read. I am embarrassed to say that I'm forgetting the actual title of it. Just keep an eye on CNN and MSNBC. The authors are on their book tour now, but I think it's something that you might want to see. And if you weren't sure about the differences between the two parties, I can't even imagine that you don't know about it by now. Like, I genuinely can't fathom that you can't see a difference between the two by now. If you indeed can't, or say that you are undecided, here's a little more for you. Former President Donald Trump described Ukraine in bleak and mournful terms Wednesday, referring to its people as quote-unquote dead, and the country itself as quote-unquote demolished, and further raising questions about how much the former president would be willing, if elected again, to concede in a negotiation over the country's future. Trump argued Ukraine should have made concessions to Russian President Vladimir Putin in the months before Russia's February 2022 attack, declaring that even, quote-unquote, the worst deal would have been better than what we have now. Trump has long been critical of U.S. aid to Ukraine, frequently claims that Russia never would have invaded if he was president, and that he would put an end to the war if he returned to the White House, but rarely has he discussed the conflict in such details. His remarks at a North Carolina event billed as an economic speech, because he's so good at staying on topic, come on the heels of a debate this month in which he pointedly refused to say whether he wanted Ukraine to win the war. On Tuesday, Trump touted the prowess of Russia and its predecessor, the Soviet Union, saying that wars are what they do. The Republican former president notoriously tuned slights began his denunciation of Ukraine and alluding to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's recent criticism of Trump and running mate Vance. He wants. This book has come out at a perfect time. He's in the pocket of the Russians. If he's not financially in the pocket of the Russians, his extreme lack of intellectual curiosity has made him a tool of a KGB master puppeteer in Putin. And remember, that's what Putin was. He was a KGB agent. He led spies on missions. He directed them. He was an interrogator. He was a PSYOPs officer. He has been widely reported and largely considered to be a man who had people spying for the Soviet Union, and they didn't even know it. They legitimately did not even know it. He plays Trump like a fiddle. Because Trump is not, again, I don't think Trump is a dumb man, but he's stupid. And he's intellectually lazy. So I don't think, he's just not curious. Not only does he not understand things, he doesn't want to understand things. Because it's just easier not to. It's like being in school. If you have homework, well, homework's hard. It's easier to just not do it. And then bitch about how unfair the homework is. That's kind of Trump. And remember, just this week, over 700 former security officials from various administrations, going back to Reagan, said that Trump is unfit to return to the White House and would be a national security threat. We already know he's a national security threat because he sold some of the documents he stole. because they simply can't be found. He can't find them. He doesn't know where they are because he sold them. A man would sell his own mother for the right price. There's been a discussion going on Facebook Messenger. There is a chat group called the Kennedy Effect Annex. I thought it was clever. Maybe you don't. Sorry, it's a Kennedy Annex. It is like a sidebar discussion that can continue when we're not here on the air. And I believe that it's been pretty substantive. It's been respectful. Every now and then somebody gets a little over emotional. But it's a pretty solid discussion. Respectful, substantive, factual. Loaded with opinion, of course. Among the discussions that have been taking place this past week are the quote-unquote differences between the parties. A pox on both their houses. They're both the same. Bullshit. Respectfully, absolute 100% bullshit. One party is actually trying to govern. One party wants you to vote. One party wants to grow the middle class. One party wants to reduce wealth inequality. One party is defending democracy, both at home and around the globe. The other is Trump. Do you know how Trump would end the Ukrainian war? He'd tell Russia to take it. He would stop all support. The Ukrainians would eventually run out of arms because Western Europe can't arm them to the level that we can, and certainly not together. We could completely arm the Ukrainians alone, the United States, given the amount of money that we spend on defense. The rest of NATO cannot arm them to the same level that we could alone. And together, there's nothing that the Ukrainians should be wanting for, other than, if this war continues, bodies. Eventually, they will run out of bodies. You know how Trump would end this war? He'd cut all support, pull us out of NATO, and let Russia steamroll Eastern Europe. You honestly think that if Trump let Russia take Ukraine, that he would care about any of the rest of the countries? Doesn't care about Poland? Doesn't care about the Balkans? Sorry, I keep saying Balkans. It's wrong. It's just wrong. He doesn't, or the Baltic states. He doesn't care about the Baltic nations, Estonia, Lithuania, and gosh, why am I doing this again? I'm having real problems with my brain tonight. He doesn't care about that. No. He doesn't care about that. He just doesn't. That's how he'd end it. By allowing Russia to just steamroll across it. Except that that's not a viable solution. It's not any kind of solution. There was something else. Vice President Harris is going to the Arizona border with Mexico to campaign. Risky, but I get it. Zeke Miller and Colleen Long for the Associated Press from Washington. Vice President Kamala Harris will visit the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona on Friday as her campaign tries to turn the larger issue of immigration from a liability into a strength in hopes to counter a line of frequent, scathing political attacks from the former President Donald Trump. The campaign announced Wednesday that Harris will be in Douglas, Arizona, across the border from Agaya Prieta, Mexico. One thing that she has over him when it comes to immigration, there's really two things. And Trump doesn't know one of them. The largest mass clemency, not clemency, God, I can't find any of my words tonight, amnesty. The largest amnesty for quote unquote illegal immigrants in the history of this country was done by Ronald Reagan. Because corporations wanted unaccountable, cheap, non-union labor. And they gave the Reagan campaign millions of dollars. He paid them back by granting this mass amnesty. Trump doesn't know any of that. And sadly, most Republicans don't know it. I do. And now so do you. Republicans have never been serious about actual immigration, immigration controls, immigration reform, strengthening the border. They've never been serious about it. In the same way, they are no longer serious about growing the middle class or keeping government out of your bedroom. These are all fun little phrases and catchphrases that used to describe Republicans, but now they're just bumper stickers because they don't live by any of it. They don't practice any of it. They just effing lie to you about it. Strongest border control, border protection bill ever written in this country was written by Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, with the assistance of some Democrats and some Republican members in the House of Representatives, but primarily Senator Lankford. He himself called it the toughest bill ever written. He expected pushback from the Biden-Harris administration. We can't go that far. We can't spend that much money. We can't. The administration said, yes, we're in. We'll sign it. But Trump needed a campaign issue. So he called his loyalists on Capitol Hill and said, kill that legislation. And that's exactly what they did. And Lankford said it. This bill was going to pass, and then President Trump got involved. Because he needs the issue to run on. To the listeners, viewers, friends of mine that have become Trump cultists, when does it stop? When do you wake up? When do facts finally creep back in? And you'll notice too, by the way, especially people like Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Rick Scott, they'll always complain about our southern border's wide open. No, it's not. And they know that it's not. But when a Democrat is in the White House, they start bitching about our open border. What does that tell the people in Central and South Central America all the way through to Mexico? When United States senators start talking about our open border, these would-be Americans, these aspirational people who just want to shop, who just want to stay alive, they don't know the nuance of that. They're not understanding the politics behind it. They're not understanding that Republicans on Capitol Hill are trying to cause border crises for the sake of political gain. They don't understand it. All they hear is open border. And so they pack themselves and their families and their small children, and they seek a better shot at life. And then the Republicans use them as political tools. We had a solution to this, a bipartisan solution to this, and Trump killed it. He killed it out of self-aggrandizement, out of self-promotion, out of self-interest, and out of a lack of intellectual curiosity. When it comes to Ukraine or the border, the Trump campaign is not about solutions. It is not about policy. It is not about legislation. It's not about governing. It's not about democracy. It's about Trump. And the 30 to 35 to 40% of you who have been blinded by this for nearly a decade now deserve better. You are smarter than this. You're smarter than this. You are better than this. Our country is better than this. And I hope to all of you out there that you can take the last couple minutes of the show and share it with those MAGA co-workers, friends, family that you know you have. I got them too. And I don't suppose they'll agree with me, but maybe it'll piss them off just enough to make them think a little bit. You deserve better. One of the most powerful things that Vice President Harris said in her interview with Stephanie Wool tonight is, I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers. But I will always do my absolute best for the American people, for the majority, for those who can't fight for themselves. And that's the fundamental difference. You might not like Vice President Harris, you might not like her policy positions, but she's actually running for the position of president to do the job of president. Trump is running for it for revenge and retribution and wealth. So what do you want? Which is better? What do we deserve? Do we deserve a would-be strongman? Or do we deserve an actual functioning government? Please keep an eye on Facebook. I'll let you know if I will be here tomorrow night. Surgery in the morning. No idea how I'll be feeling by tomorrow night. Our plan is to be with you back on Sunday and next week. More surgery for me next week. So we'll see how it goes. Please keep an eye on Facebook. That other side of information is our Facebook group. I'll put all the news about the program right there. Please keep an eye on that. Until then, for everybody at GCPR, for Thomas, Gilbert, Gambert, Gretchen, Bob Kosh, Simon and Chuck, for Ben and Brett, for T. Nathan, who comes up at 11, for everyone that surrounds the Kennedy Effect and TKE Tonight, that's Lynn and George, Kristen, Days of the Dog, and April Riddick. I'm Jeff Kennedy. That's about all the damage we can do for one night. We will hope to see you tomorrow. Again, I'm leaving that up in the air. Check out the Facebook group for news. T. Nathan from 11 p.m., Thomas from 8 in the morning, Simon and Chuck from 6 p.m. tomorrow evening with the debut of Here's to Your Healthcare. Until then, have a great night, everyone. Please take care of yourselves and each other.